Hello, my name is Karen, and I would like to talk about the permission to intervene from a Montessori standpoint in a Montessori environment. So permission to intervene, that's a tricky subject because in Montessori you're looking for great concentration in a child. That is the greatest thing to achieve. You're not looking so much for the right outcome, even so you're expecting the right outcome as well, of course. But more important is that you see the child in the deep concentration. There is a psychologist who got very famous by calling this the flow. And that is basically what it is. You're just in the flow, concentrating, becoming unaware of your own existence, just only concentrating on the materials and on what you're doing. And there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening in your brain, a lot of systems that are going to be working, stuff that you understand, where you connect to previous knowledge, where new questions are going to be raised, and this is just the highest goal, to be in the flow. So one wonders, why would you ever want to intervene, really? But there are two ways when you do want to intervene. One of them is with permission, and the other one is without permission. So when permission is obviously when you are asked by the child, they ask you, please, can you help me? And yeah, you do. You go and help them. That's the ask way. The other way, without permission, is when there's health and safety reasons. So, for example, when there's a fire, of course, you would intervene. That goes without saying. But there's other health and safety reasons. So, for example, you can see that a child is going to cut their finger while cutting the kiwi. You might want to intervene and just help them to restack the fingers or something. So you don't want to interrupt completely and take it away from them, even so that sometimes might be the case. But you want to make an intervention to keep them safe. Another intervention is, of course, if the child is just throwing around the materials, is not really interested, it's not good for the materials, and somebody else might get the materials in their head. So, of course, you want to intervene as well, and that's a great time to reflect as well about why the child's actually doing this. So the two ways, the two options why there is a reason that you would intervene is A, when the child is asking you, they might ask, I'm stuck here, I need help. The other option is a health and safety reason. That are the only two options when you ever intervene. So I guess we could stop right here, but we're not. We're going to talk a little bit more about Montessori and the environment, because to be able to trust your child to such an extent that you're not going to interrupt them whenever you it comes to you, or that you protect this concentration from other children not interrupting them as well. You need to trust. You need to trust the child that there is actually something happening, that a learning process is happening. And to be able to trust your child, there is different things that you can do. The first one is that you want to have knowledge about the child. The second one, you want to have knowledge about yourself. And the third one is you need the right kind of environment in the wider sense, meaning not just the tables and chairs you're surrounded by and the walls, but also the community, the feel of the community, expectations of the community, the empathy level of the community, all those kind of aspects, and as well as the environment. What does this environment expect? Does it expect peace and calm, or does it presume rowdy? So just the whole environment you want to be aware of. Knowing the child, knowing yourself, and the environment. Let me talk about knowing the child first a little bit more in depth. We often talk about, oh yeah, I know the child, and yes, yeah, I've been knowing them since they were a little baby and stuff. But do you really know them? To know the child means that you are meeting them on their level. You will understand what their interests are. If you understand their interests, you can come up with great learning strategies that fit their interest. For example, if you have a child and you think it's probably time for them to learn fractions, time in the way that they're ready for it. Their understanding has progressed to a point where fractions is the next step, the next possible step to take. So you might want to, have a look at fractions with them. But then, as you try to make fractions really exciting, you realize that the child is just not going to have a bar of it, because they just don't. They don't want to work with that material. And you still might think, I think the problem is not the fractions. I think the problem is that at this stage they don't like this kind of materials. But if they understand fractions, they will love the material. So you might have a knowledge of the child of loving to bake. So you can go with them to the kitchen and you can start making a cake or biscuits or something like that. And you will have a whole cup of flour and half a cup of sugar and quarter of a cup of oil, and there's all these different fractions, and you just emphasize it. You take the egg and you break it in half. You separate one half and the other half is on the other side, and just concentrate on fractions within the interest the child has. And once you've done that, and there's an interest in fraction, they go, okay, fraction not so bad after all, interesting, helpful, Then you might go back to the fraction material and go, oh wow, remember how we broke the egg in half? The circle is kind of in half, isn't it? So, and then you can continue with hopefully with the fraction material. If it doesn't work, just reflect some more. You'll find something. Knowing the child will come up with great learning strategies. Knowing how the child is learning, are they an auditory learner, a visual learner, a kinetic learner, all of the above. Just being aware of it is helpful as well. Definitely will give you great ideas. Also, knowing the child, you want to be aware of human development. So, for example, Piaget's different steps of development, well, constructivism is also what Piaget stood for, wasn't it? So Piaget, which really was also very informed by Maria Montessori, but Piaget was very famous for it. There's different developmental steps that we are living through our lifespan. So really, our development only stops once we're dead, really, which is great. So. I have, for example, a 2-year-old, and he is completely obsessed with food, which is understandable because he is learning to feed himself. He's very well with spooning things. He loves spooning things into his mouth or from the big bowl in the middle onto his plate, and he just loves everything about food and everything that goes with food, really. Lately, now that he is 18 months, I realized more and more of an interest for should I call it toilet training already? But for the other opening of his body. So for example, these days when he makes a fart, then he will imitate the fart. He will how it sounded like, and he can imitate them very well actually. So, and he will a lot of the time he will eat something, and then he'll look at me and he'll go caca, caca, which means that he actually is feeling like he's going to the toilet. And most of the time it happened already, but he is starting to be aware of it, which is great. So he's moving to the next developmental step, which Piaget pointed out as being between the age of 3 to 4 for the toilet training area, and for 2 to 3. Sorry, my son is 18 months, so in 2 to 3 is the toilet training area, and I can see it happening. I can definitely see a great interest for him arising there. So there is under human development there is value in categorizing humans for the different age groups, because there are certain expectations you can have with certain age groups. However, I'm not a friend of generalization. Like some children learn quicker than others, some teenagers learn quicker than others, and some adults become nostalgic quicker than others. So it is just a point of reference that is good to be aware of, and to keep in your mind when deciding which activities to offer to the child. again, under knowing your child, be aware of the human developmental step that those that they have taken and those that they have not taken. And their age will give you a reference point. Yes, a reference point. So, and then also know them personally. So this personal knowledge is gained through observation, as well as listening, conversations with them, maybe also with the parents. So you look at them personally, the child in the center, like in the Bronfenbrenner model, you have the child in the center, and the first layer around it is maybe the immediate family, the immediate caregivers. Maybe the next level around that might be the street they're living in. The next level around that might be the city they're living in, or maybe the village, or maybe it's farm they're living in. Then playing into that is ethnicity, the culture, what are they surrounded by. And just being aware of all these points will give you a deeper understanding of the child and will enable you to trust, because that's what it's about. You have to learn to trust the child. It's very important. This brings me to the next point, to you. So to me as well, to us as adults in the room. We have to have a self-awareness. Self-awareness is something that's thrown around everywhere. But just be self-aware, just I don't know, just breathe and concentrate on with teeth you're brushing, so you're self-aware of teeth brushing or something. But I don't mean that self-awareness. I mean the deeper self-awareness of your inner self, of who you are made up, or how you are made up. Like the parts that you consciously know and like to portray, or consciously like to hide, but also those parts that are subconsciously there and that sometimes come out even so you don't want them to, or that just come out anyway, even so you might want them to come out. Just be aware of yourself as a complete human being. And the great phrases, I think, to think about, to come to an understanding and just order this whole self-awareness, how I'm going to start, where I'm going to stop, is epistemology, ontology, and ethics. These different words stand for certain systems. That's why they are such long, complicated words. But they make good sense. So epistemology is basically the study of how you came to know this, whatever this is. So how did you come to know that man and woman have the same worth? Because that is something that is for me in my culture the fact, but it's not universally true. So how did I come to know that? And it's good to reflect on that. It's good to reflect on a whole lot of things. Maybe on the things that I don't really like so much. My subconscious thinking. For example, I do sometimes have this subconscious idea that I perceive a man as more trustworthy than a woman, which just makes no sense at all. Why would I think that? There's no sense in this at all. But it's just a subconscious value system that I'm tackling with, and I have to be aware of it. So working together with children, it probably doesn't pop up so much, but talking with educators, that's probably more when it comes in. And if a woman says something and a man says something, I have to realize, no, it's the same valid. Both of them come from an informed standpoint, and what the man says is not more knowledgeable or valid than what the woman says in general. Like they're both the same. So, and this is a very personal shared information. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that you have in your subconscious, as well as in your conscious, where you go, how did I come to that? Why do I think that? How did I even come to that? So that's epistemology. Ontology means that each one of us is different. But I don't mean let's celebrate variety of life, that each person is different. One has blonde hair, one has, blue eyes. And I don't mean that. I mean that each one really is different. Like the differences that we hold within ourselves, they are informed through through what we took apart in epistemology. But for each one it's different, so for example, when I say, oh, black cat, then I say, oh yeah, black cat, that's, beautiful animal. Well, somebody else says, no, a black cat, that is a very suspicious thing, because if it runs across your path from left to the right at 12 at night, then you're going to have 7 years of bad luck, whatever, suspicious, from my understanding, suspicious perceptions people might have about a black cat. So each one is really different, even if we think something is the same. It's not, each one is different. And the ethics, so all these things inform our ethics. Ethics is something that comes transparent to us. If we've ever had a good conversation with a primary school child, especially the younger ones, because they will tell on one another. And we think, why are you doing that? Why are you telling on your brother? Why are you telling on your mate? How can you do that? Why do you tell me they've thrown sand? And it is because they have got an understanding that throwing sand is not a good idea. But they're not 100% sure, because it was actually their best friend who did it. And they just need to check that their ethics are right. And that's why they come to tell on you. So ethics is what makes you think this is right and this is wrong, which is only for you like that, possibly. Maybe somebody else has got a completely different understanding of what is right and what is wrong. But everybody has a certain set of ethics, and we need to know what they are. And we have to be aware of them when we are working with children. So that's self-knowledge. And all those three, epistemology, ontology, and ethics, they all work together like a circle, and they become us. So that's why I find those three concepts very helpful to start taking oneself apart for the greater goal of being able to trust the kids, because you know yourself, so you can trust them more, because you know why you think certain thoughts about them. And there is this article, it's called Models of Childhood. If you would like to have it, please get in contact with me. Models of Childhood has got 10 different ideas how we perceive childhood. And I would be surprised if one of them completely concurs with you. One might be more concurring with you than another, or you might think all 10 of them are not really good at all, and maybe one of them is not in the article, who knows. However, for me, really interesting was this idea of the child as this brat, as this brat left alone will just go haywire, be acting irresponsibly, and just be crazy all over the place. Cannot be trusted, has to be controlled. And I was thinking, this is something that I come across a lot, like I can see it in the media. This is to my understanding, at the current point of time, 2017, the underlying expectations of most adults in the current power generation, which seems to be, the 40-year-olds of now, that are making those TV shows, and also of us who are watching it and who are the greatest paying customer, so that needs to be catered to. So I wonder where it comes from. Why do we think that, and why does hardly anyone question this belief? That is just one system of childhood. And it brings a great not trust into the child, this system. Another system that I thought, oh, this is really interesting, that's from the 1800s, basically. When you see pictures from those times, you will see that a baby has got the proportions of an adult, where you might think, wow, a baby is much cuter, why would you do that? And they do that because their perception was that a child, even a baby, is a completely finished adult already. They're finished, they're complete, so they don't need to learn all these things. And of course, they also had babies who can't walk, just like us these days, but they still believe that the whole mind and everything is already ready. It's complete. So to take it to an extreme, for them it would be acceptable for a small child to go night clubbing, have a smoke. that is all right, where we would wait, no, children, no way, no way. For them, it would be okay to do that. And that's why they portrayed like baby Jesus or kings as a complete adult already, in adult clothing, next to a horse, miniature, but adult, with the complete clothing on that the adult is wearing, because that's how they perceived, how that was the perception of adulthood. And with that comes a great trust, because the child is already ready. So of course you can entrust them great decisions, So I wonder sometimes how that went, when you just trust and expect so much of them, that must be, maybe equally as hard as being expected that you're going to go haywire when you're left alone, I don't know. So, but that's something to think about. This article, Models of Childhood. Get in contact with me, I'll pass it on to you. Somebody said to me, and it was Stephen Arnold, he said, have high expectations and low judgment. So how does that work? High expectations and low judgment. How would you do that? So, for example, you can expect a child that just came in from outside and threw the jacket on the ground because they wanted to go and, draw a picture now of what they've just done outside, which is a great thing to do, of course. But the jacket can't stay on the ground because it's in the way of everybody, and that's not where it belongs. So it can't stay there. It might even be a safety hazard because somebody steps on it and slips. It just can't stay there. So you're going to say to the child, you have to pick up your jacket and hang it up, because the jacket just hangs up. That's it's not on the ground. You will approach that with every child differently, of course, but there's something for you to intervene and for you to do and to say. But you can't get angry when they don't do it. And I was thinking to myself, how am I not going to get angry when they do it? How would I do that? Because it just turns into this nagging. And then the nagging just turns into frustration. And then the frustration might even turn to anger, resentment. Just all these negative feelings you don't want to have in your environment, So how are you going to do that? And I guess you just have to be very clear of what you want. You have to have a good understanding of what you want. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But just stay with this phrase, knowledge about yourself, and think about high expectations, low judgment. Because when you have a high expectation on a child, that's when they can grow. They can grow and they can, just fulfill these expectations. Not for you, not because your expectation is fulfilled, but because they can say to themselves, I'm capable, I'm able, I'm able. I hung up the jacket, and when I go outside, then boom, there it is. I know exactly where to take it from, and I can do it all for myself. It's all safe. Everybody can run around. All my friends can run, and it's safe. I did it, and now I can move on to making the picture I wanted to do. So it gives them the high expectations, low judgment, gives them the ability to succeed and to do it for themselves and to be proud of it for themselves. Gives themselves the endorphin rush, not because you said to them, oh, well done, you don't want to say that ever. And somebody else said to me, so is this a setup for success or is this setup for failure? I think, often that is something we have to ask ourselves. You have to know yourself, and you also have to know the child, and you have to know, is this a setup you're making that will help the child to succeed, or have you just set them up for failure? And it was a friend who shared this with me about a boy that was struggling with let's say reading was more difficult for him than it is for other children, so that, like dyslexia, and he then, through lots of processes, he then decided that he would read a speech out. And when he was in front of everybody, my friend was thinking, well, was this cleverly thought up? Is this now a setup for failure, or is this a setup for success? What's going to be? And actually he succeeded because he wanted to do it all the time. All along it was his motivation. He wanted to write the speech. He did it in his words. He did it in a way that he can write it and that he understands it. He learned all the words and he wrote it out, and that's what he wanted to do. So he succeeded. It was great, the concern she had was not necessary because all the steps were taken correctly, and she had a knowledge of herself as well as a knowledge of the child, and everything was to the right expectations, I suppose, to the right skill level of the child, self-motivated. It all worked. It was great. So so knowledge about yourself is very important regarding epistemology, ontology, and the ethics. There's models of childhood, which is very important to be aware of when you're working with children. And there's a few quotes that I've given you that are hopefully helpful. The third part, very important part, is the environment. And this is environment in its wider sense, in its whole fullness. So the environment will influence everybody who is in the environment, while also everybody who is in the environment will influence the mood of the environment. So the environment is these obvious things like chairs and tables. Are the walls cluttered? Are they not? Are the shelves organized? Are the materials in the shelves, are they tidy? Are they useful? And are they complete? All those will be sending messages, if you want it or you don't want it, but it's going to send a message. And part of the environment, also the adult, and the adult's knowledge of self is going to be informing the environment, because the adult will decide which children are enrolled and which ones are not. How is the dynamic of the group is to an extent decided and greatly informed by the choices the adult makes. Also, the expectations the adult has are a big part of how the children will be towards one another or in the environment, as well as the current status of mood. If if the teacher came in or the adult came in and has just had a very annoying car drive to work with being cut off and possibly getting angry, or possibly an accident and just being frightened and scared or concerned, or all those things will play out in the environment, and to be aware of it is important. Therefore, you will see it in your environment, and it's good to look for it. It's good to look for what mood and what feeling is in the environment, what language is being spoken, and what expectations are silently reinforced. And the same impact that the teachers have and the environment has, as in of the physical environment, also the children have on the whole environment, as in of group dynamic and everything what's happening. If you've got one child there that is just really upset because maybe dad went overseas and they didn't agree with dad going overseas, and now they're just angry and frustrated and letting it out on the peers, well, obviously that is going to impact the work cycle. And you want to know your kids and everything the children bring to the table, and the families that are part of the children, all of that is going to influence the environment. If you want it or not, it's going to have an influence of some sort. So that's a lot to think about, but it needs to be done. Then further in the environment are materials. So there are those materials that are Montessori materials, and hopefully only those ones are there, and they are self-correcting. So you never need to intervene when a child is puzzling with something and is concentrating and hasn't asked you to come in, and there is no health and safety risk. So no need to intervene in this child's concentration. Everything needs to be done to protect that child's concentration. This material is self-correcting. If at one stage it doesn't work anymore, it will not fit. It just won't fit. There's correcting charts for the materials for the older children, and the children are expected, and they are actually interested in getting it right. So, and they are expected to check against the chart, and that's what they do, because there's a procedure how to work with the material that the child has been shown. It goes like this, like this, like this, like this, and then at the end you're finished. Obviously, with a puzzle, when all the pieces fit together, for example, the cylinders, one big cylinder, small cylinder, or the other cylinders, which is, long cylinder, short cylinder. When all the cylinders fit, then obviously you are done. And there's no need for anyone to intervene while the child is trying to figure that out, unless the child is asking you. Oh, there's a health and safety risk. Also, the materials, they look at one thing at a time. So if you as an adult can see that the child is struggling, you'll probably figure out fairly quickly what they're struggling with. It might be not having a concept of big and small of the cylinders, which they wouldn't have. Otherwise, there's no need for them to work with the materials, and they'd be bored to work with it because they can just stack it together. If they have a problem, let them struggle with it. Struggle is good. You don't want to intervene. Struggle is good, teaches persistence, and also once the struggle is finished, they go, it's done, I did it, gives great self-confidence, gives them their own endorphin rush, you don't want to intervene. If you come in and you show them exactly how to do it while they're doing it, not in the presentation, but while they're doing that, maybe even correcting them or just going, oh, this one goes there, something like that, you are robbing them of the greatest thing, and that is the learning. And that is what keeps it interesting, because they're learning something. The process itself is really cool, and that's part of it, and that's important. You don't want to interrupt that. And the end result, when it's all finished, it's going to be obvious. If the child is just completely throwing the things around, obviously you would be coming in because it's the second point, it's health and safety. For the child, somebody else might get it in the head, and also for the child themselves, it's actually not, if they're honest, it's not the nicest feeling to throw around materials. So it's a health and safety thing. You want to come in, and at that stage, it's important to reflect upon what it was that made the child throw it. Yeah, and that will bring me to the next point, where sometimes you might think, okay, intervention, I get it, only with permission or without permission, health and safety reasons. So now I'm confused what I'm going to do with myself in the environment, either at home with my kids or in a school setting of some sort. And a great system there to think of is STREAM. STREAM is a shortage, is an acronym for suggestions, time, record, evaluate, assess, and monitor. So STREAM. S stands for suggestions. Suggestions means because you know the child in all its complexity, you know yourself in all your complexity, and you know the environment in all its complexity, you will be great choosing the right thing for the child. To an extent, that sounded like you are choosing for the child, they have to do it. That's not what I mean. You are you will be very aware of suggesting the right thing, for the child. So as suggesting, so they will be happily learning what you've thought might be an interesting thing for them, and you suggest it to them, you demonstrate, you show them, and then they can engage with the material whenever they want to. The T in STREAM stands for time. So you, at different time sequences, you always want to check in to see if the child is still busy with it, if they are enjoying themselves, as in of, are they in the flow, are they completely concentrating, or are they just going, and they actually don't really want to do it. If they don't want to do it, just, keep on checking in every few moments and just see what's happening. Maybe they pretend they don't want to do it, but actually they do want to do it. And they just, for some reason, just think it's cooler to pretend that they don't want to do it. So just leave them to it. Maybe they're just moving things from one side to another because they're actually just moving the materials while eyeing up their friend who's doing something interesting, or listening into a conversation of somebody else. And that might be valid, that you have to observe, and every time just record what's going on there and just base your decision upon that. However, before you make a decision, there's more in stream than just S and T. There's R, which is record. So you want to record what they're doing and what levels they're at with for example in math and language, what levels have they progressed, what's still interesting for them, and having all these things recorded, you can build up on that. This is something what can be shared in a staff meeting as well, and see what the other people recorded. A very, very handy thing. Sometimes good to be able to go back to a recording to just raise awareness again for yourself of what the situation was, or what has been happening, what has not been happening, and just see, I can see a trend. This child really learns while shoveling around materials and looking how other people do it, and then they go to that material and go bang, bang, bang. That is possible. So just record. Evaluate is what I touched on already. Stream, evaluate. Everything you've recorded, you will of course evaluate, and just see what conclusions you come to. You can share it with workmates or with your partner if it's at home with the children, or somebody else, maybe the nanny, or who, there's other people that are involved, and just evaluate what you believe that you've been observing and what you've been seeing, and then you can see how you can go to the next step for the child, which direction is a good step to take. Stream A is for assess. So in Montessori we don't assess as that, we don't really have tests. Well, we don't have tests, not really. We don't have tests, but we ask questions. So when you have a lunchtime conversation, you just you can just bring something up. Oh look, I have a toast. It's shaped like this. I wonder what the shape was called. And then the child who's just been working with those kind of materials might say, oh, it's a square. Or the child who's been working with those materials might look at you and go, it's a circle. And then okay, obviously. There is room for progress in this area, and we will have to revisit that. So you ask questions, or when you have a conversation with a child by themselves, you just ask questions, and then you see where their understanding is at. Also, the M in stream stands for monitor. Monitor is meant over a longer period of time. So, for example, throughout the week, you will be keeping track of what the different children are doing. Particularly one child that you might have had a lesson with. You will monitor and keep track of what the child is doing throughout the week. Also goes in with getting to know your child, so you can trust them. Getting to know that you yourself have made the right decision or possibly the wrong decision, and it's good to know that as well. You can be proud of realizing you made a wrong decision, because that means you can make a right one after. That's great. So monitoring is also very important. Stream. Just remember that. Stream. Suggestions, time, record, evaluate, assess, and monitor. So that's stream. Further, I would like to touch on, just as a last part to this, on ways how to make clever interventions, because you don't want to go in, generally speaking, and just go, no, do it like this. No, that's not a very good intervention. Or do it like that. No, you want to make it a bit more heartfelt, I suppose. So one intervention is extrapolation. So extrapolation means that there's a certain system that the child has learned and understood already, and you just extend that system by something that is similar but different. So, for example, if you've done additions and subtractions and multiplications, you might want to do divisions with the child, and that might be the right thing, because you can say to the child, look, it's in the same category, you're well aware of all the other things, and I've seen you do it, and this is something that I'm sure you'll be interested in as well. It's called division. It's really cool. Let's divide something. And who knows, maybe that then leads to fractions, who knows. But that is the system of extrapolation. Another way of intervention would be interpolation. that means, for example, when sometimes you see a child and they are working with a certain kind of material and, oh, they put it away. And you go, oh, that's interesting. And they choose something else. And then maybe a few days later or the same day, they take the same material again. And again, at the same point, they go, oh, put it away. So at that stage, you probably want to have a good look at what's happening. And it might be that they follow a certain path, trying to connect the beginning to the end that they want to get to. And at a certain point, they are just remembered something wrong, or maybe they mix one system with another or something. So at this point, you have not really been asked permission to intervene, but you can see if you don't do something, they will just put it away again, and they will maybe file it in their mind, no, this doesn't work, So they're silently asking you to intervene. I don't know. Is that that's a sensitive thing to say, isn't it? Because you can hide behind that phrase. But in this point, you do want to come to them and just say, look, I can see you're doing this and this and this, and then at this point, you're starting to do that. But actually, at this point, you want to keep on this direction, and then just leave them to it, and you will find that they will continue then the new pathway, and they will come to the result. So interpolation, help them to connect one point to another without telling them exactly how to get to it, and just say, look, this is where things are not going well anymore, or where you've done wrong, and just continue down that road. Yeah, and another great way of intervention is anecdotal. So you just come up with an anecdote. So an anecdote is a story where you tell a story that is carrying the system of what you are trying to convey to them, but it concentrates on the story instead of on what it actually is that they're doing. So, for example, if they're in the process of knitting a scarf, and they have a bit of a hard time getting the scarf finished because it's a long time of doing the same. Sometimes depends on how long you want it, I guess. You might want to say to them, I was out, in the snow, and I was skiing, and I had this jacket, and I had a hat that was really warm, this hat, but my neck was really cold. I wish I had had a scarf at that time, because the scarf is such a handy thing to have. And then you just leave it like that. Maybe that is something where the child goes, oh, actually, we're going to the snow, and I could just take the scarf, I'll have a warm neck, because I don't like being cold. And you just leave it like that. So that's anecdotal. So ways how to intervene that I personally find very helpful is extrapolation, interpolation, and anecdotal. Again, very, long, hard words, but that's just how it is. These long, hard words, they grasp in one word a very complex idea. So that's why we have those complicated words. Further, of course, I cannot say enough how important it is to observe. Observing children in the environment is just so, you'll find so many clues. If I observe my baby, now he's 18 months, so he's not much of a baby anymore, I suppose. But even when he was younger, I thought, yeah, I'm going to observe him. And my gosh, I can't believe how many things I've came to realize how he's communicating with me. I said, like so many people, I cannot blow his nose, he doesn't like it, he just gets really upset. As well, no surprise, I just came up to him while he was doing something which looked like not much to me, because he was just lying there and looking, but to him he was lying, and he was looking, and then I came in and just go, that's annoying, just imagine somebody just comes up to you and goes, that's not very nice, of course you're going to go, you don't want it, you can't say, excuse me, so you cry, there's nothing else you can do if you're a little baby. So I started saying, excuse me, I actually have to blow your nose now because you've got yellow running down to your lip, and I actually have to blow your nose now because that's not very hygienic. I'm going to blow your nose. And his attention was on me and on what I said, and after a time he understood blow your nose, that what action is going to follow now, and he was fine with it. In fact, I actually think he enjoyed it. Afterwards, when I say, I need to blow your nose because you're snotty, he would actually look at me. So he would be quite happily having me blow his nose. It just shows observation is so important. And in a busy environment, there's never enough time, I know. But on the other hand, there's always enough time to do it twice, right? If it goes wrong. So yeah, because then you have to do it twice. So to not having to do things twice, I really urge you, take the time to observe. It's very, very important. Very important. Take the time, maybe once a day. Or start with something that you can manage more easy. Start observing once a week. Just sit down and don't help in the environment. Don't call something across, or people. If the kids come to you and start talking to you, just say, "I'm observing now," and don't look at them. And don't talk to them. This is a chair that is for observing, and if an adult is sitting on this chair, then they're actually observing and they're not able to do anything else but observe. And sit there and observe, even so it gets really hard sometimes. Stay sitting, observe, and make notes. This will lead you to an understanding. That's another important word, understanding. But not just a shallow, understand me, understand the child, I understand the environment. No, I mean really deep meaning, the really deep meaning of understanding. Because if you really understand what is going on, then you really understand what you believe needs to be happening, and then you can talk precisely. So you can very precisely say to a child, before you haven't picked up the jacket to hang it on the hook, you cannot choose a material to work with, because this jacket on the ground is dangerous, and you have to hang it up. That is precise. There is no maybe, if, possibly. This is precise, and the child can really understand what you are saying. They might not like it, but they really understood, because you very clearly said what you mean, which comes from a very clear understanding of the environment and what the situation is you are in. So that is all that I have to share at this stage. What I perceive as very important and interesting, just thinking of this permission to intervene. It's a lot more complex thinking about it than when you just first hear it, isn't it? Permission to intervene. If there's any questions you have, or anything that you disagree with that you would like me to think about, I'd be more than happy to do that, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you and just exchange some emails, so please just contact me. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.